So, Denis, you're a filmmaker from Slovakia. You're living in London right now. You made a killer film called Apparition.
Yeah.
Mark J. Blackman played it forward by nominating you for this episode. Your film's in festivals now. It's on fire. It's doing really well. I saw the film. It's not currently available online because it is in festivals. And so you shared a private link with me. And it's a really smart, cute, clever, thoughtful, even poetic film. Really, really well done. So hats off. Not easy to accomplish. Your actors were superb. I mean, phenomenal. So I know you've got a lot of knowledge and wisdom to kick down to our audience today. So we're expecting big things from you, all right?
Yeah.
All right, so
Okay,
no
well,
pressure.
I'll try to impress everyone.
No pressure. You just from the heart, man. That's the best thing. So I know that you can do that. So first question is, why did you make the film? And when I'm asking you that, I don't mean the superficial reasons like, oh, I wanted to get in festival and become famous and get my career going. I mean, why this film? You wrote it, you directed it. What did you want to say? What's the film saying? What's the message?
Well, I'm not sure there is I think the message would be in one sentence that what it's dealing with, which is the question of faith in modern world, is much more complex than we often think, and how that ties to things like hope and loneliness and God and atheism, etc. And I wasn't really trying to answer anything. I mean, on the contrary, I was maybe rather trying to ask questions with the story.
So as a writer, and I get that, and that's a well-formed answer, and I understand as an artist, you're making a product that you don't want to say, oh, well, here's the answer. This is what I meant to say, and I don't want to pigeonhole you either. But I think there's something deeper in the conversation, right? I think that your film is very intelligent. And there's a critical moment in your film, right? And without giving it away, there's a critical moment where your protagonist realizes something. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, he has this big realization, and it's the soft climax of the movie prior to the reveal. It's really, for me, that's the climax, is him and that actor and his expression and what he feels. The reveal later is, an afterthought. So in that moment hangs the entire story, the entire narrative. And that moment says something profound. So can you, is that, to me, that looks like why the creator of that art created that movie, for that moment. And I'm wondering what that moment means for you.
Well, it means a lot of things, because first of all, that moment comes in a sequence which can be sort of taken literally, but also figuratively, because essentially it's this ascension that he's going through, and which is very messianic. And in that moment, the character takes upon himself that all the everything that the other people see in him. They think he's a saint or some sort of a modern day prophet, which he doesn't understand at all. And then this moment comes, and he sort of assumes this messianic existence. And B, it's when we are not speaking figuratively, but purely, on a in the basis of reality, it's a moment also when he starts feeling compassion towards others. As a very lonely person, he somehow opens himself up to the world and starts helping people. So
I think you nailed it on the head. I think that compassion is the pivotal moment of connection, that really happens in that piece. So that's what I really thought was profound in the movie. So that said, so that's kind of like on, why do you think, I mean, maybe kind of like pushing for a deeper why, why did you, Denis Dobrovoda, have that desire to make this film? Why not write something else? What, maybe in your background, or what is it that you wanted to maybe have a cathartic experience about, if art can be that?
Yeah, well, I think that's a really good question. I'm not sure I can give a simple answer to that, simply because I'm not even sure why I make films. It just because it's not a hugely enjoyable process, and it's very difficult often. The result can be shit. But for some reason I make them, and the reason I made this film was because these are questions. I mean, I went to Christian schools as a kid, so I always had classes in religion, and I always thought of these things. And I went through a very kind of atheistic phase, and then I stopped thinking about it. But I think everyone really thinks about questions of faith and God at times. And among other things, I would say that this is a topic which really attracts me. And I had this maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I had the idea of something appearing randomly, the crux of the story, which is the apparition appearing on the wall. And then I was toying with the story around it, and I had all kinds of different endings. And even different characters, and I thought that actually the one that you see on the screen works quite well, because I think the last shot works very well, and I just thought that it kind of spelled out my view of these things, which is, I would have a tendency to see a lot of these things in a humorous way, and I don't really understand people who are particularly too very religious, but at the same time, maybe more recently I've discovered the value in faith that people have, and how it can be a real blessing for people.
Well, that's really cool, because your film certainly says that. I mean, it certainly is it shows the value of faith. And I think that's part, demonstrating that in a modern context, and bringing those two worlds together is really what's done incredibly well in your film, and the real unique element. And I think what the little that you shared growing up in religious school, it's really interesting, because it sounds like what you've done in your life is bridge this old world mentality with this new world mentality, and found peace. Does that feel accurate?
Yes, definitely. I mean, it definitely is. Well, I think it's a film made by someone who kind of wishes that he had faith. In the way that the people in the film have it, because I think it's a wonderful thing to have in life, but I personally struggle with having it as well.
Well, I think everybody does. That's really cool, though. That's really cool, and it's really interesting. It kind of leads me to the second part of the question, and also it makes me think of what you said in the beginning, is like, I don't really know why I make films, but it's not fun, it doesn't necessarily feel good, but I wonder if there's an element of faith around it. And that kind of sets up the second question. So, you've visualized your film, you've written it, you've pre-produced it, you go into production, and then the real deal happens. You had an amazing cast of actors, awesome, super talented, highly professional people. They pulled it off, like, great job. All of them, lead actor was great. Supporting cast were just as good. So I definitely want to hear your thoughts about how you directed those actors and how you selected them and working with actors and what advice you can give during production. But the question really kind of in the format of the show is, so here we are, the rubber meets the road. You had this vision. Looking back on it now, did the vision actualize the way you planned it? Or did it happen differently? And did you make the movie that you set out to make?
Yeah, I think I did make the film that I set out to make, and the reason for that is because the development period of the script was so long that when it actually got to pre-production, I had something that was sort of so finished that we made very mild alterations in terms of the dialogues, but in general, it's if you saw the shooting script. Or the last version of the script, it's exactly the same as the film. So in that respect, I'm very happy in that. And I think as a director, I quite like to have things under control. So in France, where I made this film and where I was schooled as well in film directing, a lot of people are very like to improvise, and people like Gaspar Noé say they don't even have scripts, they just have kind of director's intentions or a few pages. And for me, it was really important to nail all of that down and then take that as a springboard to work with the actors. So we went through a very long casting process, which I think, as you rightly pointed out, I think I had a very lucky hand with picking people who were very, very good. And I would like to thank them this way as well for participating, because they worked for free. And we did, again, there's a big debate about whether you should rehearse or you shouldn't rehearse. We did rehearsals, and plus with the main actors, I even, especially with Henri, who played the main character, we had sessions where we would meet up and we talked about because actually in the film you know very little about this guy, what he does, his background, his family situation, etc. is never discussed. And we had sessions when we met up and we talked about everything, and he kind of created the character in his head. So he thought about which football team this guy supports, where is he from, his maybe ex-girlfriends, his family, his job, everything. And I think that's how he managed to create a character which has multi-dimensional being. And what's interesting about this role, which I think is a cool anecdote, is that the last shot of the film had to be shot first, because if you've seen it, you know that at the end there's nothing on the wall.
Right. Yeah.
And then we put up the apparition itself afterwards.
Right.
So he basically had to go through the whole catharsis and everything without having shot anything at all. So we came in on the first date, and this is what we were doing. And I thought that was a quite difficult thing to do from the acting and directing perspective. I took advice from some of these things I read about how other famous directors worked. And what we did with Henri was that we sat down in the kitchen of the flat, and I gave him these headphones, and we played a few very sad songs. And we calmed the whole set down. I told the AD to sort of that no one moves or anything. And then Henri just left the kitchen and went straight to the set and just did very well.
Wow.
So that was, and this is where, I spent a lot of time reading what other directors wrote about directing and watching YouTube videos. And I think it can be very helpful, because I think that way, this wasn't something I came up with. This is something people have been doing for a long time. And I just thought it was a good tool to use.
That's great. Mark J. Plackman actually talked about bringing music, inspirational music on the set and playing it for actors last episode, so it's interesting. Let's see. I wanted to ask you, okay, it's a 12-minute film about 12 minutes. How long did you workshop, write the script for, and how long did you rehearse for, and how long did you shoot for?
So the shoot was 4 days, 4 full days, and actually the script all takes place in one building, but the flat and the outside of the flat is completely different buildings. So that was something we had to sort of cheat in the editing as well, and it's quite amusing because this is never. No one has ever noticed anything. So the shoot was 4 days, and the rehearsals, we probably did 2 big rehearsals kind of with everyone involved. And I think that's really important to do, just also to find space. You know, we were doing it in a big room, and on the floor we kind of tried to imagine the walls of the flat, and we tried to find the ways for people to move, because what obviously happened is that we had lots of actors in extremely confined spaces. In one of the scenes, I think there's 8 actors and the flat was really very, very tiny. So what was very difficult there was finding the space for camera and for people's movement, and rehearsing that was already just quite difficult, and the blocking and everything. So that had to be, we had to think about that beforehand. So we did about 2 big rehearsals, and then as for script development and that kind of stuff, well, I mean, the real pre-production started in the beginning of September, last September, and we were shooting in the beginning of December. So it was 3 full months. And I was mostly working on that, so I would I had night shifts at this bar in Paris, and during the day I was working on the film. So a huge amount of time went into this, because, obviously other people were working on it as well, my producer and my AD. Especially the AD was someone that I would like to thank as well this way, because he really, really helped incredibly.
What's his name?
So it was 3 months of sort of pure pre-production, 4 days of shooting, and then 3 or 4 months of editing and sound, which was dragging a bit, but it was because the guys I was working with had some other projects as well. And as for script development, there was, I think I carried the idea in my head maybe even for almost 2 years before I wrote anything at all.
Wow.
And I found that that's my kind of preferred way of working, is that it's somehow the idea sort of blooms, and because when it's still in your head, you really can change everything. And I find that once you put something on paper, you have this sort of skeleton, which obviously can change things, but it becomes more difficult. So I had it in my head for about 2 years. And then I pitched it actually in my class, school, and I pitched it to a professor who I really respected. And she really liked it, and she was like, you should go and write it. So then I went and wrote it, and I maybe spent 6 months writing it and sending versions to friends that I trusted and who kind of gave me feedback, and I obviously played around with it. And then after I finished film school, I went, and this was my first project. So that's how it sort of worked. And I had very, very little money for this. We did a Kickstarter campaign, which again, I would like to thank all the backers, but we got about 1,000 euros. And then the rest of the money I got from my parents, actually.
Well done. You knocked it out of the park for your first film. You guys knocked it out of the park. What's your AD's name?
He's called Jean-Baptiste Moreau.
Jean. Well done.
Yeah, Jean-Baptiste.
Jean-Baptiste.
He's a great guy.
Cool. How long did you work with the lead actor for prior to filming?
maybe 2-3 weeks, but it was just maybe 3-4 meetups and rehearsals.
Cool.
But I think we clicked as people as well. I think there was a certain understanding between us, which is very important. And I think it was like that with a lot of other people who were in the important positions, and I think that's why it sort of worked out, because I was very, very afraid of making something that would be, embarrassing. And whether you like this or not, I don't think it's an embarrassing film.
Super professional. I mean, it's of the highest professional quality. It really is. Yeah, definitely. So, what did you learn, and what words of wisdom can you pass on to people like yourself going out there and making short films and wanting others to see them and recognize the quality that's out there?
Yeah, I think that's obviously a very good question. I would say that in the grand scheme of things, what was good for me is that I did a year of film school. I think there's obviously that whole very, very big debate about whether you should go to film school or not. And if there are people out there asking the question, my personal recommendation would be to do at least a year, because in that year you can learn so much that you can sort of build on afterwards. Because before I went to film school, I always knew that I would maybe like to do this stuff, and I did a few very, very amateur productions kind of myself, but I had zero technical knowledge. And what's fantastic about film school is that if you go there and you want to get something out of it, you really can, speak to the professors, and if you're lucky, you learn fundamentals of everything, and you won't have to spend years of your life figuring out very, very basic things. So I think that worked really well for me, because I came from a very different background. I didn't study filmmaking at all for my bachelor's. And as for other words of wisdom, just very obvious things. I think a lot of people are trying to tell stories which they don't care about and which they think are cool or whatever, but there is no personal involvement. And I think that's why so many short films that you see are not very good.
Well, I think that's profound advice. I mean, that's great, important advice. And what about, you clearly are talented on a number of different levels, as well as working with directors. You worked with some directors that are quite your seniors. What was it like directing them, and what techniques did you use, and what did you feel comfortable with, and what, perhaps, in terms of the best results?
Sorry, I didn't get the first part of the question.
You directed. Oh, no worries. You directed actors that were quite older than you, some of them,
yeah.
Right? And they're more experienced in terms of filmmaking, theater arts, acting. I know it can be very intimidating as a young director giving direction to people that are, a lot older than you and a lot more knowledgeable potentially than you are. So how did you approach that, and what did you find worked, and what's kind of your directing style?
Yeah, well, I think that's a really fantastic question, because I think it's something that people don't really talk about very often, and I think it's great that you bring this up.
Thank you.
Because when you are someone like me who has very little experience, and then you go and you try to make something professional like I did with this film, you will end up having to, working with professionals or semi-professionals, and those are people that are used to professional guidance, and I felt this pressure very strongly on me, because there were some people on the set and in post-production, and the actors as well, who obviously were used to much older people than me and much more experienced people than me, and you're there, and you know that maybe they're doubting you at times, and you kind of have to stick to this vision that you have, and I thought that was a very difficult part of it. Not so much with the actors, actually, because actors are very often very, very nice, I find. There's so many kind of bad stories about them, but I think really I've never really come across anyone that difficult. They usually just want to act.
Sure,
but
they want to perform.
People don't really talk about the fact that when you're directing, you're not just directing actors, you're directing sound, camera, and the art department, the makeup, I mean everything, costumes. And in some of the positions in these departments, I had people who were very, very experienced, and they were much more experienced than me. And you have to sort of assert your position as the leader on the set. I ideally wanted to do it without any sort of open conflict with people, which I think I managed in the end. But I think that's something that is very hard, because I think directing is a very social, it really is, you have to be very good with people in general.
That's a great point.
And I think there's lots of empathy involved. But yeah, that kind of, the element you mentioned of me being much younger than some of the people that I was directing, it was definitely hard, but you just kind of have to trust yourself. I really think you have to trust yourself, because there were moments when the whole set was sort of against me because we were running out of time and everyone was like, we can't do this one shot, for example. And I knew that it is crucial for the film, and I sort of forced it through.
Wow.
And in the end, when we were editing, I was very, very happy because we ended up with lots of coverage, and that was just very good because we had so much to choose from in editing. And this is actually one piece of advice, going back to your previous question, that I would give to young directors, is try to cover situations as much as possible, because you won't end up stuck when you're editing. Because you will definitely find that some of the things you shoot, you can't use, and we had a lot of shots like that, but we always had something to fall back on, and I think that was really, really good.
That's great. That's great advice. How did you maintain to be assertive, force your vision through, and not alienate your entire team in the process? I'm sure it was long hours at the end of the day.
Yes, it was difficult. I think a part of it is my AD and my producer as well. They were guys that I could rely on in many ways. Especially the AD was really fantastic, and he even in the moments when he sort of was doubting what I'm doing, he never really showed it, and he was always my ally on set.
Wow.
And I think
that's
your AD is just such an important,
super critical.
It's such an under valued position, but it's just so important.
That's super, super, super critical. I think you hit something really, really strong there. Having a second in charge, I don't know what the ranks are in the military. I don't know if that's a general, commander, or lieutenant, but having that person is critical to back you up. That's awesome. Okay, last question. We're kind of there, and I wonder if I can kind of create a pretty bow around this whole thing. But you mentioned something during directing on the set, which is critical as a director. And you come to it, interestingly, as a lot of directors do, with having written the story. So the vision, you said the word vision, right? And vision is sort of your guide throughout the entire process. And that's kind of the straight line that you follow, is that vision and trying to maintain that course. So I wonder, what do you think? How is that vision related to faith? And I wonder if that's why you make films.
What do you think? Tell me.
I think it's one and the same. I think having a vision and following that vision is faith. Yeah. And everything else doesn't matter.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it is. Yeah, I think you said it there. But for me, I think for me the difference is that a vision I can see in my head, whereas faith I can't. So the thing about Apparition was that I actually saw every single shot. I mean, not maybe to such a complete extent, but I could have storyboarded it very easily, and I think it would have looked almost exactly as the final product looks.
Wow.
And that's what I like about visions.
Wow.
Whereas faith just doesn't have that, you know.
Wow. Well, you know, life is long, and we'll see how your vision and faith evolve and intertwine. And it's been a pleasure and an honor to have you on the show, man. Thank you so much. Your film is awesome. I can't wait for it to be available online. Let us know, and we'll send the word out, because it's a great film and people really need to see it.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. I wanted to thank you guys as well, because it's a brilliant idea, and really the fact that someone is out there doing this, I mean, you deserve a medal of some sort from someone, or an award, or something. But
Thanks, man. That's super
it's
kind.
really wonderful, and you're doing a great job.
Thank you.
Keep it up.
Thanks a lot, man. That gives me faith. I appreciate it, man. All right, I'll talk to you later. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, bye. Goodbye, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Till next time.